YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is Chat News Global. I'm Amitabh Revi. In a quick turn of events, or at least public events, India and Pakistan have ceased fire from 1705 p.m. IST. That's just over 1 hour 22 minutes back. All guns of all manners in all formats across all boundaries have been stopped. Sudden developments there. We just
Well, I think, Amitabh, if you remember in the morning, we were talking about how off-ramp has been offered, and I think we spoke about how Secretary Rubio's call to Asim Munir was a clear indication, and the readout from the US in the morning IST, of course, Indian time. It was clear that something was happening behind the scene, and Asim Munir would have been read the riot act by US. And although they were in touch with India, and India has not made any bones about it, because Ajit Doval, the NSA, has been speaking to, at least has spoken once publicly, we know, to Marco Rubio. So I think something was being worked out behind the scenes. And I think this was expected. I was thinking of Monday maybe, but it's happened much quicker than that.
And the very brief statement that came out from the Foreign Secretary and from the Foreign Ministry, of course, saying that it was initiated after the DGMO spoke today.
That's right. So I think after the higher level dignitaries had spoken to each other, Secretary of State, Pakistan's NSA,
the ground level thing.
Then the ground level, then the DGMO of Pakistan, who was a Major General rank officer. I don't know whether it's now a Lieutenant General, but normally he's a Major General rank officer. He has called India's DGMO. In this case, it is Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai at 15:35 Indian Standard Time, according to what we've been told and what the statement read out by the Foreign Secretary. And he said that they agreed after their talks, maybe lasted for 10-15 minutes, that all manner of firing will stop from land, air, and sea from 1700 Indian Standard Time today, which means immediately there is a ceasefire, and that's about it. I mean, the Foreign Secretary just stopped at giving out that statement. Although Marco Rubio in his tweet has said that they have decided to or agreed to talk on broad set of issues at a neutral venue, which our sources are telling us is not true. India has no desire to start talks with Pakistan on any other issue. This was a limited understanding on ceasing fire or stopping firing, which has been on since 7th of May when India hit terrorist targets in Pakistan.
So first of all, let's deal with the ceasefire, and then we'll talk about the discrepancy between what the US is saying and what India is saying now. What would have prompted that turn of events? I mean, the whole day we've been talking about an escalation, or at least Pakistan had escalated and India was retaliating.
Basically, I think the world was watching in horror that and the West particularly is always afraid of what they call two nuclear armed neighbors firing at each other or fighting. They're always worried that that dimension will come in, because there was another dimension to this, that there was some agency reports that came in that the National Command Authority of Pakistan would meet under Shahbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister's chairmanship, which indicated, if it was true, which seemed true, but it's been called off at the last moment, that nuclear dimension was being thought about, or at least signaled by Pakistan, which would have horrified the West and particularly the United States. So I think from the tweets of Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, as well as VP J.D. Vance, it appears that United States was frantically working the phone lines. I'm sure there are other actors involved, which will come out by and by. The Saudis most probably were the other actor. And they would have spoken to both Indian interlocutors that included Dr. Jaishankar, who was the External Affairs Minister, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and probably one call to Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif on the Pakistani side. After all that, the one public readout from Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, this morning, Indian Standard Time, was that he's spoken to General Asim Munir, who is the power center anyway in Pakistan. And from there on, I think the events just cascaded and just took that frantic pace, which has culminated in what has been declared now.
But again, now let's, what the information that we have and what has been made public by India, both the Foreign Secretary saying that, in fact, Why don't we just play out the Foreign Secretary's very short bite? We were told about this briefing a few hours back, but this is all he said, and of course, didn't take any questions.
Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours.
So that's all he said. The DGMOs will talk on the 12th of May, and that, if I'm not wrong, is Tuesday, which
is their normal pre-scheduled meeting or meeting on the phone, which happens every week if it's possible, or their representatives talk. So I think it's back to where it started, or sort of back to the normal. But several questions here, which I'm sure you have and other people have, is why suddenly this ceasefire? But I think India has been sending this signal for some time. If you see all the statements, all the answers that Foreign Secretary and even our diplomats abroad are giving, that India has made its point. It has targeted the terrorist infrastructure and the terrorists. And India has had done this in a non-escalatory manner, had not targeted the military. It was the military targets or civilian targets. And it was Pakistan which tried to ratchet up the tension by doing all this. And therefore, India was giving an exit route, I would think. And probably because of these talks that were going on in the background, India was aware of this. So was Pakistan, but they were not making that statement. But India was already giving that hint that that process is on de-escalating. And the de-escalation had to come from Pakistan, because the original escalation on 22nd April of killing innocent tourists in Pahalgam was on 22nd April. That was an escalation. Then India's action, which India had the right to take action against terrorists and their leadership and the sponsors, was legitimate. But after that, India has been saying that we will only respond to whatever escalation Pakistan does. So I think the thing was with the initiative, or the ball was in Pakistan's court, really, to initiate this ceasefire call, or reach out to India and say, okay, we want to do this.
And again, the point that sources have told us that India is saying that there is no decision at all to hold talks on any other issue at any other place. Let's take that as face value, and then let's look at what the Americans are saying.
I think India's that is consistent. That's consistent with India's stand for the last 10 years, where it is saying that talks and terror cannot go together, and Pakistan has to sort of change its behavior, or at least give assurance on abjuring violence, as well as support to terrorist groups and terrorism, or using terrorism as a state policy. So the question will be asked further: what happens to India's decision to stop Indus Water Treaty, or keep it in abeyance? We'll have to take it one by one as go along. We don't know. We can't second guess the government, but the mood will be not to let that pressure go on Pakistan, because here the limited agreement or limited aim or the objective on both sides was to not fire at each other, and that has been achieved by this ceasefire. Beyond that, I don't think there's any other agreement.
Now let's look at the American side, and Donald Trump wanted to take all the credit. After a long night of talks mediated by the United States, pleased to announce India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire in all caps. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence, is the way of talking. Thank you for your attention to that matter.
Which I think he's actually only talking and giving out the details of what they have agreed on. That immediate ceasing of firing on in all domains, that is land, sea and air, as India has said, our Indian Foreign Secretary has said. Beyond that, I don't think any assurance has been given by India, and otherwise he would have tweeted that, is my sense. Marco Rubio, I do not know why he has tweeted those two lines, extra lines, but those of us who watch these developments understand that if the president is not tweeted or has not given out in that statement, and India's stand, we know, has been clear, and sources have told us in the last 20 minutes or half an hour that India has not agreed to anything else.
And just to our viewers, a reminder, you can write in with your questions and comments, and I do see some of them, which we'll probably take. But again, looking at Mark Rubio delineated a lot more in his social media posts and the statement that was put up on the website, in State Department website, where he talks about over last 2 days, the Vice President Vance, who was in India for a few days, and himself, that's the Secretary of State, and then the NSA, he's also holds the post of the NSA, engaged with senior Indian and Pakistani officials, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Shehbaz Sharif, External Affairs Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar, Chief of Army Staff Asim Munir, and the National Security Advisors Ajit Doval and Asim Malik, and don't forget who Asim Malik's second cap is.
Yeah, he is also DGISI, so he wears two hats there. But I believe India's MOD is now going to hold a press conference just now. So I think we'll need to go to that to understand what's happening there.
So while we just get that ready,
there is a live press conference, I think, which is coming.
Sure. While the production
on the MEA thing
gets that ready, I'll just again look at Mark Rubio's statement, where he goes on to say, after I'm pleased to announce the governments of India and Pakistan have agreed to an immediate ceasefire and to start talks on a broad set of issues. Now, this is where the Indian position is completely divergent. To start talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral site. I mean, that's
it's never happened before in the India-Pakistan equation. So I doubt whether India has agreed to this. And we'll have to now see how India handles this. Because the US, like you said, is taking... So there is this pressure coming in, I think. Can we hear it somewhere?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this press briefing on Operation Sindoor and related developments. We have with us Commodore Ravi Nair, Colonel Sophia Qureshi, and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh to brief you. With that, I hand over the floor to Commodore Nair.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As the Foreign Secretary had said, you're aware there's an understanding that has been reached to stop all military activities at sea, on the air and on the land. And the Indian Navy, Indian Army, and the Indian Air Force have been instructed to adhere to this understanding. Since the tragic events at Pahalgam, you're aware that our responses have been measured and very responsible. Details of these have been shared with you over the past few days through our various press briefings. What has also happened is that there is a significant amount of misinformation that is being undertaken from the other side. And as a professional military organization, we thought it is also our duty to dispel those misinformation aspects, as also state the facts of the case as they stand. Towards that, I will now hand over to my colleague, Colonel Qureshi.
नमस्कार। अब मैं आपको पाकिस्तान की मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन के बारे में अवगत कराऊंगी। पहला, पाकिस्तान ने यह क्लेम किया कि उसने अपने JF-17 से हमारे S-400 व ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल बेस को नुकसान पहुंचाया, जो कि बिल्कुल गलत है। दूसरा, उसका यह भी मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन था कि हमारी एयरफील्ड्स, जो कि सिरसा, जम्मू, पठानकोट, बठिंडा, नलिया और भुज में है, ये उसका मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन भी बहुत गलत है। तीसरा, पाकिस्तान के मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन के मुताबिक हमारे एम्यूनिशन डम्प्स जो चंडीगढ़ और बियास में है, उसका डैमेज हुआ, यह भी बिल्कुल गलत है। हमने आपको मॉर्निंग ब्रीफिंग में बताया था विद फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर के साथ कि ये सारी चीजें बिल्कुल सही सलामत हैं। अब मैं आपको बताना चाहती हूँ कि पाकिस्तान के एक प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ये बात की गई थी कि उनके सीनियर मिलिट्री ऑफिसर्स जो कि पूरी तरह से ये भ्रामक हैं और तथ्यों से दूर हैं कि पाकिस्तान की ओर से ये झूठा आरोप भी लगाया जा रहा है कि भारतीय सेना ने मस्जिदों को नुकसान पहुंचाया। मैं इससे बिल्कुल स्पष्ट करना चाहती हूं कि इंडिया इज ए सेक्युलर नेशन और हमारी सेना भारत के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की एक बहुत प्यारी झलक है। इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस ने पाकिस्तान को बहुत भारी नुकसान पहुंचाया, उनके मिलिट्री इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स को, चाहे वो लैंड एसेट्स हो या फिर उनके एयर एसेट्स। यही नहीं, इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस ने पाकिस्तान की एयरफील्ड्स स्कर्दू, जकोबाबाद, सरगोदा और भुलारी को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाया। इसके अलावा पाकिस्तान के एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम, रडार सिस्टम, उनको भी एयर स्पेस में अनटेनेबल किया। यह भी बताना चाहती हूं कि लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल के पास पाकिस्तान के कमांड एंड कंट्रोल लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस और उनके मिलिट्री इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स, मिलिट्री पर्सनल्स का इतना भारी नुकसान हुआ कि पाकिस्तान की ऑफेंसिव और डिफेंसिव कैपेबिलिटी को नष्ट कर दिया गया। अंत में मैं फिर से ये बात दोहराना चाहूंगी, इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस पूरी तरह से तैयार है, सतर्क है और भारत की संप्रभुता और अखंडता की रक्षा के लिए पूरी तरह से कमिटेड है। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
So several attempts were made by Pakistan on spreading a misinformation campaign, as we have seen for the last few days. There were attempts made to say that our S-400 at a northern base was destroyed, which was completely false, and that it was destroyed by a JF-17. It was a false information. Also, that the BrahMos installation was attacked and it was destroyed was false. The destruction of airfields at Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Bhuj, Nalia, etc. was also a false claim. The forward ammunition dump at Chandigarh and Beas are also fit and fine, and we showed you these in the photographs in the morning briefing today. Also, there was a certain different way of miscampaign that the Pakistan conducted by its press conferences, which was conducted in a manner which were completely misleading and devoid of facts. Pakistan has been spreading fabricated allegations that the Indian armed forces have targeted mosques. Let us make this very clear here that India is a secular nation and the Indian armed forces are a reflection of our constitutional values. We hold every place of worship of all faiths in the highest regard. Our operations have been aimed exclusively at terrorist camps and facilities being used for anti-India activities. No religious sites, I repeat, no religious sites have been targeted by the Indian Armed Forces. Over the past few days, as we have seen, Pakistan has suffered very heavy and unsustainable losses after it has given us an unprovoked attack on our installations. It has suffered losses in both land and air. There has been an extensive damage to the crucial Pakistani air bases like Skardu, Sargodha, Jacobabad, and Bholari. In addition, a loss of AD weapon system and radars made the defense of Pakistani airspace untenable. Across the line of control, extensive and precise damage to military infrastructure and command control centers and logistic installations. In addition to that, 2 military personnel had led to complete breakdown of its defensive and offensive capability and also Pakistani morale. So.
In conclusion, let me reiterate that whilst we will be adhering to the understanding that has been reached today, that is the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force, we remain fully prepared and ever vigilant and committed to defending the sovereignty and integrity of the motherland. Every misadventure by Pakistan has been met with strength, and every future escalation will invite a decisive response. We remain fully operationally ready to launch whatever operations may be required in defense of the nation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. With that, we come to the closure of this presentation. Thank you very much.
So, Nitin, now we had a naval representative as well on the podium there, delineating the position. But just if we take a step back, I know there are lots of comments and reactions and passions that are being expressed after most people would not, if not all, would not have expected this kind of a briefing or this kind of a position as of now. If we just step back and look at what has India achieved after it retaliated to the first escalation, which, as the government has been pointing out, and you mentioned, the first escalation from Pakistan, which was the terrorist attack in Pahalgam.
So let me talk about 2 or 3 things that we have achieved in terms of what India has done with Operation Sindoor. First of all, it demonstrated the ability to penetrate Pakistan's air defense very successfully and hit military targets at will. Even this morning, on 10th morning, military air bases were hit deep into Pakistan, or at least the most important ones, the Noor Khan Air Base in Rawalpindi, the other one right down in Sindh province, the Rahim Yar Khan, and the others.
And I think we have that map that we just
have the map.
put up.
So India demonstrated that first thing. Secondly, all the nuclear bogey, the bluff has been called because they didn't utter a word about the nuclear issue or the threat, except for the diplomat in Russia, the Pakistani diplomat in Russia, who gave an interview. And also now India has made it clear, and this came this morning, which was in the media, all over the media, that Pakistan has been told by India, maybe through the US, that any further act of terrorism will be treated as an act of war. Which means if you repeat this kind of thing, what you've done in Pahalgam, then India will reserve the right to launch some similar attacks on Pakistani military assets or terrorist infrastructure and bases. I think this is a new normal, which has been established as a new envelope, which has been created. India has pushed the envelope really on the Pakistani side and exposed Pakistan's weaknesses, which have been achieved in this Operation Sindoor really, which should be now built upon. And India is refusing to anyway talk to Pakistan, from what the indications are right now. There will be tremendous pressure from United States and others to talk to Pakistan, but India, I suppose, will withstand that, given what sources are telling us at the moment. So I think this is the new normal, that India has tested Pakistan's defenses, Pakistan's will, Pakistan's stomach for a fight, and found it wanting. So now India knows where to sort of hit Pakistan, what to do, and has also warned Pakistan. I mean, that's the more important thing, that any further act or a similar act of terrorism will be treated as an act of war, which means India will repeat Operation Sindoor in the future too.
And if history is anything to go by, we've always taken it up a notch, whether it was
Exactly.
Balakot and this. So you seem to
This
have...
is that what we call between the final option of nuclear use of nuclear weapons and subconventional tactics or subconventional operations against Pakistani terror infrastructure. India has now got 2 more options to create. Like, there is an air attack that was demonstrated in Balakot. Now you have done with missiles, standoff weapons, and accurate, devastating, like the ladies and the naval officer said just now, that India has inflicted heavy damage to Pakistan's military infrastructure and military assets in the 3 days that India actually kept attacking Pakistan's military assets and military targets. So I think that is something that is a big takeaway. And the statement or the intention that India has conveyed to Pakistan about repeating this act of Operation Sindoor or these kind of operations, or targeting of particular assets, military or terrorism assets, if another incident like Pahalgam takes place, a terror attack takes place. I think this is a new addition to the India-Pakistan equation, which has not been made clear earlier. India has always said that it will not tolerate terrorism, but now to treat it as act of war is, I think, taking it further.
Important point, and I think you're answering this question that's coming from our viewer. Why would we agree to talks? First of all, as we said earlier, also the government sources have told us that there's no question of any talks, and definitely not at any neutral venue, as I beg your pardon, Mark Rubio has indicated. The second part is without cessation of terrorism as a precondition. So this is what you're
I've just mentioned, in
talking
fact, I think whose question is that, I don't remember. But I must, from whatever I know as of now, Hari is saying this. I would think that the warning that was issued before agreeing to the ceasefire at 15:30 or at 1700 this evening on Saturday, India has actually conveyed this message from what we know. And I think people
again,
should,
like Sunny Kumar saying, what did India achieve? Nothing. But that's exactly
no.
what
So
you're
I'm
trying
explaining. I'm trying to explain to people. Let me reiterate what has been achieved. One, India has now tested Pakistan's defenses, Pakistan's weaknesses in the military strategy or on military tactics, has hit at will Pakistan's military targets or military bases and assets, and has demonstrated restraint when required. It has not targeted any religious places, any mosques, any civilian targets or economic targets. If it wanted to, India could have done this. So, and has also called the nuclear bluff again. After Balakot, this nuclear bluff has been called. I think these are considerable achievements. I know there will be passions, there will be anger, and people were baying for blood, and people were thinking. And I got these questions from many people. Are we going the whole hog and going to capture POK or POJK in this phase? And I've been saying this, that it cannot be done, because India has larger objectives of making this country economically powerful, giving or sort of encouraging prosperity or enabling prosperity to a large population that we have in the coming years. And this would have bogged down a longer war or a longer conflict would have bogged down India. India had much to lose. I think we said it yesterday and we said it this morning. If the war got expanded or prolonged, and having achieved and sent the message and also warned Pakistan, I think that is most important, warned Pakistan that any further act of terrorism, similar act like incident like Pahalgam or a parliament attack in 2001 will be treated as an act of war, which means that anything happens tomorrow or day after or in the next 1 year or the next 2 years, India will go to war with Pakistan or do similar actions like in Sindhu.
So it's not like as if other analysts had pointed out in different forums in the run-up to today that this new norm is established. You attack terrorist camps, you take the ladder higher each time from
escalation ladder
now. But then after a year or 2 years or 3 years, you have
to establish 5 years of, say, deterrence,
yeah.
Which I think is now a permanent deterrence, because India has demonstrated the political will, the military capability of hitting Pakistan's military assets. They are vulnerable. We have understood that, and it remains to be seen if India now restarts the Indus Water Treaty provisions. I don't think India will do this, because that is something is in the long run more effective than a kinetic action against Pakistan, which any case has been demonstrated, and it could have been taken further, higher up. But like I said, there are reasons why India should not have taken this higher up if Pakistan agreed to abide by the condition that India has put. That if you do any other terrorist group or any other terrorist group sponsored by Pakistan acts like in Pahalgam or carries out an attack like Pahalgam or a massacre like Pahalgam or a similar terrorist act, India reserves the right to see this as a provocation and then respond, and it will be considered an act of war. Like Pakistan used to say, if India stops or puts Indus Water Treaty on hold, it will be seen as an act of war. In fact, their Prime Minister said, perhaps, when the treaty was put in abeyance post Pahalgam, he said it's an act of war. But Pakistan could not initiate any military action against India. It was India which initiated the military action, and then now has come to this stage.
So again, you did briefly talk about it in the beginning. Where does India, I'm not hyphenating it, but India and Pakistan,
Yeah.
let's say, go from before Pahalgam to after today in terms of where we were? Which
I don't think so. We are back to square one of India's position that terror and talks will not go together. So India will perhaps will wait for proof that if you see that statement on 22nd or 23rd of April, post Pahalgam, one day after the CCS meeting took place, the Cabinet Committee on Security, and then India issued a statement putting taking those 5 steps, including putting the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, where it says Indus Water Treaty will be put in abeyance until Pakistan abjures violence and also shows, I think, tangible proof of not sponsoring terrorism. Now, India can decide when it wants to, whether it's got tangible proof or hasn't got a tangible proof, and therefore we'll have to see where it goes. So I think the new normal is India has warned Pakistan. India has achieved its limited objective of politico-military objective of showing that you can be punished if you act out of line, step out of line. We can target your military assets and military assets and bases at will, and be aware that we can do what we want if this kind of provocation happens.
political military message that you're saying there.
That's right.
Many of the other takeaways from what has happened since Belgaum, since Operation Sindoor, and today, in terms of the military on the ground, what they would have learned from a situation like this.
Oh yes, without mobilizing like Operation Parakram, you have managed to put pressure on Pakistan military. The Indian military has managed to put this. So this is a progress. There was no mobilization of the Indian army troops or nothing of the kind. Also, quickly India got within 2 weeks. It got its air defense tightened if there were gaps, and the performance of the air defense system, air defense professionals in the military is laudable. Like I said yesterday and today, this morning also, that they prevented so many drone swarms and missile attacks on India, and very minimal damage was allowed to be inflicted on India. I think that's the other learning. The third is, of course, that indigenous systems have been battle tested. The manufacturing of counter drone systems, the Akash anti-aircraft and air defense system has been tested. S-400, I'm not sure where it was deployed at all, but it's a great deterrence to have, and that is perhaps why Pakistan didn't even fly its fighter jets, although it kept threatening that F-16 will be used and JF-17s will be used. Nothing of the kind happened. So also the lesson that the cheap, inexpensive Turkish and Chinese drones were found wanting and were shot down and brought down, destroyed by the Indian air defense system. Several lessons there, and I think as we go along, we'll have to see what more can we learn, what the Indian military is learning as we speak to people. But that's where it is.
So again, just to wrap up this conversation and all the events that have happened leading up to 1700, 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time, where all guns across all fronts, all platforms went silent after the agreement between India and Pakistan. For now, like you said, this is a new norm that has been messaged across and established, which is that any other kind of a terrorist attack on India would be treated as act of war, and we've shown you what our muscle is in terms of our response
and how effective and how accurate it is.
And how do you see the US in the days forward?
US will try and put as much pressure as possible. They will claim victory, of course, that we mediated this. We can see in the statement they will go to town. Donald Trump has already done this. Congratulations, you used your intelligence and common sense, all that. But the reality is that because India was dominant and India was had Pakistan under the thumb militarily, having demonstrated how it can hit their terrorist infrastructure in the heart of Pakistan, Punjab. Also their airfields, these 4 airfields that were hit this morning on Saturday morning, all that must have alarmed the US and probably other countries. And that's why this pressure on Pakistan to initiate the proposal for ceasing fire completely. on all platforms.
Right, and Nitin Gokhale, our founder and editor-in-chief, thanks for that. We did expect a much longer discussion and lots more questions, but this is how we are at. It's just about 7 p.m. in India, and 2 hours back is when all guns across all fronts, all platforms, sea, air, and land went silent. The US is trying to claim credit for it, but India, according to sources, our government sources, it has made it clear that India has not agreed to any form of talks at any other venue. So that's the wrap for today, for today's developments. But do stay tuned to both Strat News Global and Bharat Shakti, both our YouTube channels and all our social media handles for the latest analysis for what's happening in India and across the world. Thanks for watching.